Okay, picture this. It's 3 in the morning, and for the third time tonight, I'm on the edge of my bed rocking my 4-month-old. My husband, fast asleep. He's got a big meeting tomorrow. Me? I haven't seen more than 3 hours of sleep at a time in, well, 4 months. And don't get me wrong, I love this tiny person with everything I have, but my body is just aching. My brain feels like it's full of cotton, and my patience, it's like a single thread about to snap. And that's when the thought hits me. You know, the one that just plays on a loop in the dark? What kind of mother feels this exhausted by her own child? Seriously. This wasn't just being tired. This was something deeper. It was this heavy, crushing guilt that I was messing up the one thing that's supposed to be the most natural thing in the world. So naturally, I decided to treat it like a science problem. The variables were, well, they were pretty clear. My inputs were minimal sleep, whatever food I could grab, and absolutely zero time for myself. And the outputs, a sharp decline in patience, a noticeable drop in joy, and a significant increase in me just wanting to scream for 5 minutes of quiet. The data was clear, the system was completely unsustainable. I was running on empty. I realized I was stuck in this emotional feedback loop. It's a vicious cycle, really. It all starts with this huge, fierce love for my baby. But then that love gets pushed to its limit by the constant, relentless needs. And that, well, it leads to these flashes of resentment, which are immediately followed by this tidal wave of guilt for even thinking that way. And let me tell you, that guilt, it was way more exhausting than the sleep deprivation. It was a perfect, soul-crushing cycle. And all this brought me to the central puzzle I had to figure out. See, I was doing everything I thought you were supposed to do, right? Giving every single piece of myself to my child. This should have felt like the most right, the most natural thing ever. So why did it feel so completely, utterly wrong? And then it hit me. There's this huge gap between what culture tells you motherhood is and what it actually feels like. You know, the perfect mother we see everywhere, she's basically a saint. She never gets tired, never complains, and always puts herself last. But that wasn't me. I wasn't some character in a movie. I was a real person who felt like she was drowning. My body ached, and I could literally feel my joy just slipping away. The two versions couldn't have been more different. That's when I had my big aha moment. This path I was on, the path of complete self-sacrifice, it wasn't just bad for me. It was ultimately going to be bad for my daughter. Think about it. A baby doesn't need a martyr. A baby needs a mom who is calm, present, and, at least a little bit rested. My quest to be the perfect mother was actually getting in the way of me being the mother she actually needed. So I did what I always do when things get complicated. I went looking for data. I decided to just push all the guilt and the cultural noise to the side and look at the actual science. What does a baby's brain really, truly need to thrive? And what I found was, well, it was really surprising. Okay, so first, let's talk about the hardware. My baby was born with something like 100 billion neurons. 100 billion. That's the brain's raw computing power. Basically, the same number of brain cells that I have right now as an adult. The potential in that tiny little head was just mind-blowing. And that was just the start. Then comes what I like to call the software installation. And this is where it gets crazy. In just the first year, her brain was creating up to 1 million new connections every single second. Every time I held her, every song I sang, every smile, all of it was literally wiring her brain for the rest of her life. It was building the foundation for how she'd handle emotions, stress, and relationships forever. The quality of what I was doing mattered. A lot. And that's when my research led me to this idea that honestly changed everything for me. It's a concept from a psychoanalyst named Donald Winnicott, and it's called good enough parenting. The whole idea is that kids don't need perfect parents. What they need are parents who show up and are responsive and caring most of the time. Not all the time. The goal isn't to be perfect, it's just to be consistent. For me, hearing that was, wow, it was revolutionary. And that's when it all clicked into place. See, my constant exhaustion was pumping my body full of cortisol, the stress hormone. So this wasn't just a feeling of being stressed. It was a real physical state. And it was making it impossible for me to be patient and joyful and tuned into her. It's like I was supposed to be her emotional thermostat, right? But my own thermostat was broken. I couldn't help regulate her when my own system was screaming red alert 24/7.
So that led me to this really critical distinction. The answer wasn't to be less available for her. It was about being available in a different way. The whole paradox I was struggling with, it all got solved when I understood the difference between being a responsive parent and a constant parent.
Okay, so constant parenting, that's what I was doing. It's all about jumping in instantly to stop any and all crying. But the results? You're there physically, but you're just an empty shell emotionally. It's a recipe for burnout. But responsive parenting? That's different. The focus is on being emotionally present and being a reliable source of comfort. And here's the key. It requires you to take care of yourself, because you can't be emotionally present for anyone if you're a complete wreck.
I basically realized I'd been running on faulty software this whole time. This old cultural programming was causing my entire system to crash. So I decided it was time for an upgrade. I needed a whole new operating system, one based on the actual science, not on these old-fashioned ideas about motherhood. So I wrote one. My new guilt-free protocol was actually pretty straightforward. First, I built a response rhythm. I didn't have to leap up at every little sound. Responding in a minute or two, totally fine. Second, I created regulated together time. Just 20 minutes a day, phone off, completely focused on her. Third, cultivate multiple attachments. Letting her dad and grandparents build their own special bonds wasn't a threat to me, it was a huge plus for her. Fourth, and this is a big one, schedule self-care as childcare. Taking a nap wasn't selfish, it was essential system maintenance. And finally, number 5, communicate my needs. I need help became a full guilt-free sentence. And that became my new mantra. Anytime that little voice of guilt started whispering in my ear when I asked for help or, just sat down for 5 minutes, I would just repeat that to myself. I'm taking care of myself so I can take better care of my baby. And it wasn't some empty phrase. It was a fact, backed by science. Taking care of me was a critical part of taking care of her. And you know what? The results of my little experiment were pretty immediate and conclusive. I'd say within a couple of weeks, I saw a real change. My daughter, she just seemed calmer, more content. And the reason was so simple. Babies are like these little emotional tuning forks, right? They pick up on everything. Because I was calmer, she was calmer. And our time together suddenly felt so much more joyful because I wasn't just running on empty anymore. So, yeah, figuring out that whole devotion versus depletion thing was a huge first step, but it opened up a whole new and maybe even more fascinating question. See, building this secure, loving attachment, it wasn't making her clingy or needy. It was actually doing the opposite. It was giving her the foundation to be independent. So how does that work? How does holding them close give them the confidence to eventually go explore the world on their own? Now that is a really interesting problem, isn't it?